Hey, Terra Nova, thank you so much for tuning in. Great to have you online with us as we're in part 4 of this series we call How to Begin Again. And I can't wait for this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've been talking during this series about 4 of what I keep saying are some of the most important life skills, some of the most important, I keep calling them spiritual skills that a person can develop in their lives. And by the way, this is one of those series that builds upon itself week to week. And so if you missed part 3 or part 2, you might want to pause right now, go back and watch that first. It's on our YouTube channel where you can find all of these. I'm putting the link to it right here. Go back, watch those, then come back and join us for part 4. We'll be here waiting for you. Just gonna wait right here too. Oh, hey, welcome back. Again, like I said, we are in part 4 of the series. I've been loving it. I hope you'll love it too. I'm excited for what we're talking about this weekend. Before we do that, we're going to spend some time leaning into God, some time worshiping and giving ourselves to Him. I love this first song, Not Holding Anything Back. It's a song about giving God my all. And that's what we want to do today. I encourage you to do it with us. You can find the lyrics to this song on your app or on our webpage. By the way, speaking of the app and the webpage, before you go anywhere, we would love to hear from you. If you're our guest, thank you so much for spending some time with us watching online. We'd love to hear from you as well. And you can fill out our Connect card. If you're watching on Facebook, we usually put the link right in the comments there on Facebook. You can find the link on our app, to our Connect card, on our web page, our watch page. And if you're watching on YouTube, we actually usually drop the link to the Connect card right in the description for this video. So please let us know how you're doing, where you're watching from, how things are going for you, how we can be praying for you. We would love to hear from you. But for now, let's jump into this great song, Not Holding Anything Back. And I encourage you, as the band leads us, which they are ready to do, to not hold anything back in your life as you lean into God and give Him your all. Thanks again for joining us today.
Solid ground, yours now forever. And nothing's gonna hold me back. Nothing's gonna hold me back. Nothing's gonna hold me back. Oh, my chains fell off. My chains fell off. My heart was free. I've been alive to live for you. I'm alive to live for you. Amazing love, how can it be? You gave everything for me. You gave everything for me. Everything. Washed my sin, shame away. The slate is clean, a brand new day. Nothing's gonna hold me back. Oh, nothing.
everybody. Welcome to Terra Nova. I'm really glad that you're here with us. My name is Scott, and honestly, I am glad. I personally think that you will leave better off for being a part of what we were doing this weekend. So thank you for joining us. If you're watching online, shout out to you guys. Thanks for being a part of what we are doing. Today we're going to be jumping into part 4 of our series called How to Begin Again. And so we got that to look forward to. If you're online, pull out your Terra Nova app. You got worship lyrics, you got message notes and everything you need. If you're in the room, you can grab one of these programs. If you didn't get one on the way in, our greeters have one of those for you. But we're going to have a great time together. And around Terra Nova, one of the things that we do is every week we just kind of make this commitment to say, hey, you know what? We are going to choose to live life together. We're going to gather, and we don't do that simply out of tradition, and we definitely don't do that out of obligation, but we do that. We gather to hear truth. We gather to sing. We gather to connect and to be a part of one another's lives because we believe that that is actually the fuel that we need, that is what helps us stay on mission with this calling that we have been given as followers of Jesus. And we gather together because that's this discipline we can engage in where we have the opportunity to say, hey, regardless of what's behind me or what might come, I have the opportunity to fill myself with truth and to tap into the power and the presence of God. And so that's what we are doing. And right now, as we're about to sing a couple more songs, I want to just kind of remind you of the permission you have in this moment. And it's great. It's this beautiful permission where God says, hey, you know what I want is I want you to engage honestly. I want you to have the freedom and the permission to bring your whole selves with your struggles and where you're at and how you're feeling about that. You have permission to bring and to be able to release your frustrations or your failures and those things that have held you back. And you have this permission to say, I'm going to choose to lean into the promises of God and his power and presence in my life, no matter what is ahead of me. And that is beautiful permission that we've been given by God. And so with that in mind, let's continue to sing, to reflect, and to respond to who God is in our lives.
spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't have it, I didn't deserve it. Still, you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Now it's your fault, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, still you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't have it, I didn't deserve it. Still, you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me.
the Apostle Paul, he wrote to the church in Ephesus, and he had this desire for them. He had a prayer for them, and he said, I pray that you would have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide and how long and how high and how deep his love is. He says, may you experience the love of Christ, though it's too great to understand fully. And that was his one thing. He's going, hey, if you understand that, that's going to change everything for you. And I think that's the thing that we lean into. I think that's the one thing that God wants us to grasp and to walk in that truth too. And so may we understand, may we embrace, and may we realize that love is there for us as well. Amen. Hey, you guys can go ahead and grab a seat. Let's give it up again for the band leading us in this great time of worship and celebration this weekend. And again, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us at Terra Nova this week. And one of the things that I even alluded to before is this understanding, this belief that we have that life is better lived together than on our own. And so that's part of what we do. And we believe that we can just accomplish more than on our own when we are doing things together. So with that in mind, I've got a question that I want you to just kind of consider. I want you to think through. But what is something for you that is just so much better when you're doing it with other people than when you're doing it on your own? And so I have an answer because I had the question, so I could already think of that. But for me, the answer for me would be, hey, you know what? Watching anything comedy related is so much better doing that with a bunch of people and a group of people rather than on my own. If I'm watching a funny show, I might chuckle, I might snortle a little bit. That's kind of funny. But if it's like a group of people, there's belly laughter. So it is so much better to do it together than on our own. So for you, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a road trip or it's exercising. Like you could do better at that when you're with other people than when you're on your own. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of a response, and then you're going to let us know what for you is better to do together than on your own on our Connect card. So as I mentioned before, you might have our Terra Nova app out on your phone, and you can get to the Connect card that way. But if you've got one of the programs that we've got for you available in the room, you'll find the Connect card. It's the very back flap of that. So you go ahead and find that Connect card, fold it over a couple times, and then you can tear it off and begin working on that and write that response with the thing that for you is better to do together than on your own. And along with that, if there's anything that's going on in your life that you just want us to know about so we could support you better, we could pray for you, we could just kind of follow up with you about something that you're going through, you can indicate that on that Connect card as well, and we would love to hear from everybody. And again, hey, if you're joining us and you're new to Terra Nova and this is one of your first times with us, man, it is just such a gift for us. Anytime that there's somebody who's going, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. So if that's where you're at, we thank you so much for spending some time with us this weekend at Terra Nova. And we would love to hear from you via that Connect card as well. Maybe you've got some questions about Terra Nova and what we're kind of all about as a church, and that Connect card might be a great next step to get more information. But go ahead and spend a little bit of time working on that. And if you actually are on the other side of that and you go, hey, I've been around the Terra Nova community for a while and this is my church home, like I am a part of this community, then I would encourage you to consider how you might engage in this practice of giving. Because one of our biggest values is this desire that we have to be a community that is marked by generosity, and generosity in every sense of the word. And it is not only because we believe that this world is in need of generosity and grace, but we believe that we are at our best and we experience the most joy and contentment in life when we are following in the way of Jesus. And that was something that his life was absolutely marked by. And so again, if you're part of our community, we'd encourage you to lean into that. And you can give either by using our app, by using one of the envelopes that we've got available in our program, or by going on our website. And so thank you so much for being a community that has leaned into that has said, you know what, we are so much better together than when we were on our own, because we can accomplish so much more in making God's love famous in other people's lives when we are doing that together. And so with that in mind, as we've got the next few months ahead of us, we really see just a great opportunity ahead of us to be at our best when it comes to creating great experiences for the people that we're connecting with. Great experiences for people who are going, you know what, I'm coming back to church, or giving church a try for the first time, and we're going, you know what, we want that to be as great as it could possibly be. Great experiences for our kids, great experiences for one another. And so with that in mind, we've got something that you'll find both on our app and within the program, and it is a blue flyer. Looks just like this. On one side, it mentions a Terra Nova tour that's coming up, but on the other side, it lays out a few different opportunities that we all have a chance to dive into to make Terra Nova a great experience for the people that are engaging with us. And so you will see that we've got it laid out with kind of what we call Fab 4, with 4 great options to jump in. We've got our guest services team, Supernova Kids, our setup and cleanup, and our community care. So what I would encourage you to do is to say, hey, you know what? This community will function more fully and more completely when we're all jumping in and saying, hey, I can't do all of these things, but I can do that. And so how can I bring what I can bring to this community? So look out and find a place where you can jump into. And as you're doing that, you might notice on here or on our website or on our app that you go, hey, I'm reading through in the different service times, and I'm seeing a Saturday 6 o'clock there. So who do I talk to about that typo? But it's actually not a typo. That was there on purpose because we're just a few weeks away from actually shifting our services. What we're going to do is something a little bit different as we look towards the summer months, and we are going to actually have our current outdoor options, which are Sunday morning at 9:30 and 11. We're going to shift them inside at those times, and then on Saturday in our evening service, we're going to be outside, but just like we did last summer, we're going to have that a little bit later, so at 6 o'clock to stay out of the hot summer heat and all of that. So we've got a lot more on that to come, including, in case you're wondering about for our kids, we are wrapping up our kids' renovated rooms and all that, so a couple weeks after that, kids are going to be moving back inside. But back to kind of the point that I was trying to make in the first place, which is just about this desire that we have to always be a community where we're not looking at a few people to go, hey, let's put the spotlight on them, and let's be a bunch of people that we go, we're just kind of watching the show. That's never what the Jesus movement was about. That's never what Terra Nova has been about, and that's never what we will be about. And so let's look to the ways that we can dive in together to make this a great place for our friends, for our kids, for our neighbors and family members who are going to be looking to connect in the near future. And so again, you can sign up for one of those spots. We'll get you all set to go, but we're looking forward to the ways where we are going to make this a beautiful place for people to encounter the love of God. So thanks so much again for joining us this week. And right now we're going to jump into part 4 of our series called How to Begin Again. Let's check it out.
What's up, Chief?
I'd like to get a tattoo of my girlfriend's name on my arm.
Great.
Her name's Christina, with a Y. She spells it with a Y, like Crystina.
Yeah.
And she also likes hearts, so if you could do like a heart. She likes the color blue and sometimes red.
Great. $200. Let's go.
Remember, it's Christina with a Y.
Yeah, I got it.
It's like Crystina. Oh, that's cold.
You're joking, right?
This is awesome. That is perfect. Look at that. It's Christina.
for $50, I can turn that into a dragon.
Oh, well, there's a young man who needs to begin again. Hey, welcome. Great to have you guys here for part 4 of 5 of our series, How to Begin Again. Just so you know, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm pumped about this. The weekend of Mother's Day, we're beginning a brand new series called Winning the War in Your Mind. Winning the War in Your Mind. I believe this is going to be an incredibly important series for us because, as we talked about last week, real transformation begins in our minds, in how we think. We cannot change what we end up doing if we do not change how we start out thinking, because we always live in the direction of our dominant thoughts. And this is going to be an important series for us. It might be an important series for somebody you know. So the real question is, who will you bring with you? So be thinking about, hey, who can I bring with me? Who can I invite to be a part of this? Maybe who needs to be a part of this? Who can I invite to watch with me if you're going to be watching it online, and share this with somebody else? That's starting in 2 weeks, but this week is part 4, again, of our series, How to Begin Again. And this has been a series for anybody who's ever made the same dumb mistake twice. That would be me. Anybody who's ever found themselves repeating a rut, finding themselves doing kind of in the same old thing, whether it's in your love life, your financial life, your family life, repeating some of the same things and wondering how you're getting there or why this is happening to you again. It's a series for anybody wanting a fresh start, wanting to begin again in any, or maybe during this season as excuse me, things are feeling like they're opening up again, like maybe wanting to begin again in all areas of your life. But the question we've been asking is, really, how can I make sure next time isn't like last time? Because it seems like sometimes when I decide I'm going to begin again, next time really just looks like last time. How can I make sure that doesn't happen? And we've been saying that our tendency is often, for many of us, as we're beginning again, when we're starting this new chapter, to start too quickly, to jump in too quickly, to jump in and say, I got this, I know. Last time didn't work out that well, but I learned, I know. And it's understandable, it really is, that we're eager to get out of what was old and to get on with what is new. That makes all the sense in the world until the next relationship starts to look and feel a lot like the last relationship. This new season starts to feel really familiar. Like the only thing that really changed was the date on the calendar. This job or this new career, this new path starts turning out a whole lot like the last one. And we're back in debt again, or we're back in this cycle again, or having the same arguments again, back in those same lazy, drifting routines again. And next time starts looking like last time. So how can I make sure that that doesn't actually happen? And we've been talking about 4 skills. We've been calling them skills. I think they're 4 of the most important spiritual skills or life skills. I believe they really are spiritual skills, and 4 of the most important spiritual skills that a person can actually develop in their lives. But often we have not. These are 4 of the most important spiritual skills that we can learn when we're adulting. And if you didn't learn them when you were adulting, you need to learn them now. And I'll just throw them all up on the screen. They are, and we call them steps, but they're really skills. You can say skill 1, skill 2, skill 3, skill 4. It's recognize it, rethink it, release it, and redeem it. Recognize it, rethink it, release it, and redeem it. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about this first one, recognize it. And we said, though we are all natural born blamers, hiders, justifiers, and deniers, you cannot hide and blame your way into a better future. You can blame your way into the future all day long, but you can't blame and hide and justify and deny your way into a better future, because blame smuggles your past issues into your future and sets you up for a repeat performance. And if you want next time to be better than last time, you need to recognize and take responsibility for your role in the past, for your contribution to whatever it is that happened or seems to keep happening. And in fact, we said last week, if there is anything in your life that continues to repeat itself, it's like, oh man, here we go again. How is this happening again? Chances are you actually have something to do with it. Either creating it, allowing it, perpetuating it in some way. You have something to do with it, and you need to recognize how you are contributing to what you keep getting, or it will happen again. And then last week we said we need to rethink it. Skill number 2 is rethinking, because we all ask the question, right? We've all asked the question, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? Oh man, what was I thinking? And we said, man, that's a great question. It is maybe the question, and we've all asked that question. But the problem is we don't pause long enough to actually answer it. And we don't think deeply enough to actually answer that question. And if we don't answer that question, we will keep getting what we've always got, because we've been saying in this series, if you think how you've always thought, you're going to do what you've always done and get what you've always got. And so I need to begin asking myself, hey, are there things that I think, are there ideas I have, are there beliefs I have surrounding this issue and how this happens and this person and these kinds of scenarios that might actually contribute to me getting what I keep getting? And we looked at these words from a guy named Paul, or the Apostle Paul, that I just think are genius. They are way ahead of their time, where he says that real transformation happens by changing the way we think, the rhythms and routines of our minds. We need to be renewed in our minds. And by the way, don't miss this series that's starting in 2 weeks, because we are going to deep dive on that one right there. But this week, we're talking about skill number 3, or step number 3, release it. Step number 3 is release it. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In week 2 of the series, we talked about this circle of blame exercise. We said, hey, draw a circle when it comes to what has happened in your life, what happened in the past. Draw a circle, and all of the causes and all of the circumstances and all of the people who are responsible for that are in that circle. That's all of the factors that led to why you got laid off, why she broke up with you, why your business failed, why your marriage is struggling, why your family dynamics continue to fall back into the same patterns, why you're still in all that debt. All the fault, all the responsibility, all the cause is found in that circle. And then we said, you need to draw a slice. And of course, we always draw like a pretty thin sliver. It's like, it's mostly them. I may have had something to do with it. I'm not perfect. Okay, I might have had something to do with it. But we need to recognize, we said in week 2, we got to recognize and own that part. Now, we love the rest of the pie. We love the rest of the pie because that's where the juice is. That's where the story is. And by the way, that's where all the gasps and the sympathy come in, like, oh, you poor dear. And they did what? And I can't believe that's so unfair. I mean, that's where we get all that. And the story of our parents, and our upbringing, and my dad issues, and my mom, and what she did, and that teacher was so unfair, and that landlord, and what they promised, and then they didn't come through, and then they took our money, and that's why my credit's bad. And I mean, that's where my husband never loved me. I mean, that's where all of the juicy story is. But you've got to figure out, we've been saying, you've got to figure out what your slice is. Because you keep bringing something to this. You're the common denominator. You got to figure out your piece and rethink it, or you will unwittingly smuggle your past issues into your future and set yourself up for a repeat performance. But this week, we're talking about the rest of the pie. This week, we're talking about the rest of the pie. This is what everybody else did. This is that landlord, your ex, your teacher, your parents. This is the lawyer, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the coworkers, that company. This is what everybody else is in the rest of that. And they really did. They really did do so. They really lied to you. They betrayed you. They abandoned you. They hurt you. They violated you. They said some things, horrible things. They stole from you. They took your idea. They took your job. They took your future. They edged you out. They hurt you. And whatever it is that you were wanting to begin again, there's always a them that's part of it. There's always a them. And the big idea for today is, just as not recognizing our part of the past allows us to smuggle our past issues into our future, just as not recognizing our part allows us to smuggle our past issues into our future, not dealing with appropriately, not dealing with and not releasing what others have done, the rest of the pie allows them to smuggle their issues into your future and set you up for a repeat performance. Not dealing with what they have done allows them to smuggle their issues into your future. It's like they're like, hey, let me just slip this into your baggage, okay? I'm just gonna slide this in there. You don't even need to see this. I'm gonna smuggle this into your future, into your bag, into your luggage, and you can carry that around for the next 30 years. Like, wait a minute. Hey, what is that? Oh, those are my issues. But you're stuck with them now. Well, I don't want them. Too bad. I just gave them to you, and now you're going to carry them for the next 30 years of your life. You can go, wait, what? I mean, think about that. Think about that for a second. Not dealing with the rest of this pie actually allows those people who hurt you, who lied to you, who fired you wrongly, who made promises they didn't fulfill, those people who stole your idea, stole your marriage, took your children, took the relationship with your kids you wanted to have, stole your money, took your childhood maybe, took your innocence. It allows those people that you don't like and don't want to be like and really would rather never see again, it allows them to actually smuggle their issues into your life and into your future and influence you. I mean, there's this huge irony to this. And the irony is this: not releasing the past allows the people that we least want to be like to influence us the most. Not resolving the issues from our past, not releasing the issues from our past allows the people least want to be like to actually influence us the most. And who would want to do that? Who would want to allow those people to influence us like that? The people who hurt us most to shape us and to shape us the most, but we have all seen it. We've all seen it. We've all experienced, we all know it to be true. We have all seen people. I mean, hey, we have all been people, but let's not talk about us right now. Let's talk about them. We've all seen people who did not deal properly and appropriately with their own past and with what had been done to them, with the pain and the hurt and the betrayal, the abandonment, the anger, the things that they had experienced, and they never dealt with it properly, and they ended up repeating behaviors and repeating patterns and cycles and choices in their lives, not even realizing something that might have been very apparent to you, and that was that the people who had hurt them most were now influencing them still, so many years later, still pulling the strings in their lives. And who would want to allow them to do that? Who would want to allow the people who created all of that chaos in our past and all of that chaos in that season of our lives to influence us the most? And the only way to make sure that they don't, the only way to make sure that them and their issues don't get smuggled into our lives and follow us into our future is to release what they have done in the past. Let me put it another way. You ever met somebody, and I bet you have, I bet every single one of us have, you ever met somebody who's just super uber healthy and emotionally and well put together, like their head screwed on straight, and they just seem like they're so balanced and they got it going on. And then you hear their story. Has this ever happened to you? You hear their story and there's so much darkness and there's so much pain, and you're like, oh my gosh. There's no way. I mean, there's abuse and addiction and abandonment, and there were affairs, and that's just the A's. And then they got to the B's, and it was like, there was so much more, and you're thinking, now they're so well put together. I mean, there's so much balance and wisdom and like generosity of spirit and grace, and you walk away, you're like, I never would have known. I never would have guessed that they had all of that in their past. And if you were to ever ask them, how did you do that? Seriously, how did you get from there to here? How did you get from, oh my gosh, how are you still standing to, I think I'd like to be like you when I grow up? Like, how did you get from there to here? One of the words you will often hear in their story is this word right here: I decided. I just decided. I made up my mind. I just determined one day, and I've heard people say that, one day I just decided. I just decided there was enough pain in the world. I wasn't going to carry any extra around with me. One day I just decided I wasn't going to continue down that path with them, controlling my thoughts and emotions. I just decided. And though I've never heard anyone say it quite this way, really what they say amounts to this: I decided my past will remind me, it will not define me. I just decided. My past it will remind me, but it will not define me. There will be lessons I take from it. There will be things that I'm reminded of. I never want to be that way to other people. I never want to find myself stuck in or staying in a situation like that. Again, I will learn from it, but it will not define me. I'm not going to let it be the filter through which I go through the rest of my life, the filter through which I see myself and see others. I will not let it be the script that I play over and over again in my head. It won't be the burden of shame and self-loathing that I somehow feel obligated to carry around with me for the rest of my life. It will not be the button that people accidentally push and they have no idea what trigger they just set off. I'm not going to let that happen. It's not going to define me. My past, it'll remind me. I just decided it's not going to define me anymore. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news for every single one of us. And here's what those people have discovered and what their stories prove to be true, proven to be true. And here's what they would tell you if they could be standing in front of you right now, if they had a chance. They would say, you have the ability to decide. You have the ability to decide to leave the past behind, to make up your mind to release it. And you can do that. It can be done. You, and by the way, only you have the power and the ability to decide that about your past. And in fact, here's our main point today. I'll just give you the main point, and then we're going to look at this amazing passage of Scripture. The main point is this: to ensure next time isn't like last time, release the past so the past can release you. To make sure next time isn't like last time, you got to release the past so the past can release you. And if you don't want to make sure that your past issues follow you into the future, if you don't want to allow other people to smuggle their issues from their past into your future and into your children's future, you've got to figure out a way to release it all, to release the past so the past can release you. You have to decide. I'm going to learn everything I can from it. I'll learn what I can from it, but it is not going to control me. It is not going to define the rest of my life. And the way to do that is an old school, old-fashioned word that has completely fallen out of vogue in the last season of our lives. And that word is forgive. It's not a word you're going to hear a lot right now in social media. Forgive. Forgiveness, you know what forgiveness does? Forgiveness allows you to learn the lessons from the past without lugging around the luggage from the past. Forgiveness allows you to learn the lessons from the past while leaving behind the luggage in the past. And today, we're going to take a look at something written by this man named Paul, or the Apostle Paul. He was just a brilliant thinker. You might know this or you might not know this. He actually began his journey not as a Christian, but as a Christian hater. I mean, he hated Christians, and then he became one of them. But not just any one of them. He actually became like this hair on fire Jesus freak. I mean, this outspoken evangelist of the Jesus movement, traveling around the Roman Empire and starting these Jesus communities. Everywhere he went, these little missional communities of Jesus followers that were called ecclesias. We call them churches. And then he would travel on and he would write back to many of these churches, letters to them, helping them through things. And this is a part of one of those letters that he wrote back to some Christians in a city where he had stayed quite a few years, a little longer than normal for him, a city named Ephesus. And he says something that's so insightful in this letter that even if you're not really a God, Bible, Jesus person, you're just kind of checking this out, like, I don't really know what I think about all of that. I think you would agree that what he says here is really, really true and really, really important. Now, it comes at a part of the letter in a context, and this is kind of interesting to me because this is what we were talking about last week, kind of interestingly so. He's been talking about our need to be made new in the attitude, or literally the spirit of our minds, just the way our minds work. We need to be made new up there by taking off the old and putting on the new. That's what we talked about last week. You need to take off the old. You got to strip off, clean off, scrub off the old before you put on the new. And then he says this, as part of that conversation, he says this: in your anger, do not sin. Or literally the phrase he uses is be angry and do not sin. He's actually quoting from one of the Psalms, Psalm chapter 4, verse 4. Be angry and do not sin. In other words, anger is not a sin. It is possible to be angry and not sin. There's an appropriate place for anger. There's legitimate anger, which is this natural God-given response to being violated. And there are things that happen in this world that actually should make us angry. And in fact, there are things that happen to us and happen in this world that if you don't get angry, something's wrong with you. You need to get that looked at. You need to get that checked out, because there are things that should make us angry, but that's not exactly his point. In your anger, do not sin. Like, there's a place for anger, but his point is this: when anger spills out beyond that place, it becomes destructive, and it becomes destructive fast. He says this. He unpacks that a little bit. He says, do not let the sun go down. Do not let. In other words, we have a choice. Do not let. In other words, there's a decision that you can make. And one of the lies that many of us have believed, I've heard so many people say this to themselves and actually say it to me, say things like, well, I just can't help the way I feel. I mean, that's just the way I feel. I can't help with the way I feel. I don't have a choice about the way I feel. I don't choose my feelings. My feelings just happen to me, and I can't help the way I feel, right? So it's like, hey, I can't help it. I just hate them. I just hate them. After what they did, I could never forgive them. I'm just so angry. And maybe one day, that anger will kind of go away, and then I will be able to forgive them, but I can't forgive them now because I can't help the way I feel. And I would just say this, listen, if you are just waiting for that feeling to magically go away, you will allow that person to smuggle their issues into your future. You have a choice. Do not let, and then he says this, do not let the sun go down on your anger or while you are still angry. Now, what does that mean? Is he talking like literally, like a 24-hour day period? Is he talking figuratively? Is he saying on the one hand, hey, the healthy life cycle of anger maxes out at 24 hours. Like that is it. Never go to bed angry. You probably heard that said before. Never go to bed angry. And you know what? I believe in a lot of situations, that is really true. Like 24 hours is way too long. In a lot of situations, 24 minutes is just way too long. In some situations, that is literally true. I used to, little confession here. I used to take this statement very, very literally. And when I first got married, I took it literally in conflicts with my wife as a newlywed. And we would get into an argument. I had this thing in my head like, we can't go to sleep angry. We can't go to bed without resolving this fight. We got to fight this out until we've resolved it because we can't go to bed angry. The problem is, and research proves this to be true, but most of us don't need research to know this is true. Tired people say stupid things. Right? Am I right? Tired people say stupid things and they have weak filters. And so we got into the worst fights at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning as we were trying to not let the sun go down on our anger. Then we came up with a new rule. I said, okay, new rule. No serious arguments after 10 p.m. Like if this is a tough one, no serious argument after 10 p.m. We'll put a pin in it. Cooler heads will prevail. That ended up being a very good decision. Maybe that's the best thing you'll get out of this message tonight. But then what does that mean? What does that mean, not let the sun go down on our anger? And here's what I think it means. Anger needs to be given a very short life cycle. Anger needs to be given a very short life cycle or it morphs into something dangerous and toxic, and it does so quick. And sometimes it can't be within 24 hours. I mean, honestly, sometimes it takes me longer than that to actually figure out I am angry and what I'm angry about and what my issues are and to recognize myself, which is always the first step. And sometimes it just takes a little longer to even get there. And I believe this with all my heart. There are some things that we've experienced in our lives. There is anger and there are violations that are just too big and run too deep to be resolved in a single sunset or 2 sunsets or 10 sunsets. But here's a question for you. If you're carrying some of this around, here's a question for you. How many sunsets? I mean, think about it. How many sunsets into your future do you intend to carry the anger from your past? How long into your future do you plan to allow the person who mistreated you and hurt you most to mold you and influence you the most? And they're the reason why you pulled away from God. They're the reason why you dropped out or acted out. They're the reason why you drink so much. They're the reason why you got this chip on your shoulder. You just carry it around. You've got all of this anger that's simmering right beneath the surface. I'm fine. And it's just right beneath the surface, and any little thing brings it out. They're the reason why you can't trust people. You find it so hard to trust. You find it so hard to accept yourself and to accept others. They're the reason why you find it difficult to receive or internalize love. They're the reason why you got all these issues, right? And people who know you well, they're like walking on eggshells because they know and they're like, I can't believe you brought that up. Why would you bring that up? How long? Like how many sunsets? How many more sunsets do you intend to carry that around with you? And you would say, well, I don't intend to carry any. I don't plan to carry it any sunsets, but you are. So you might need to answer that question. A month more? Would that do it for you? A year more? A marriage more? Another blown up friendship group more? Till your children are grown up and out of the house? How long do you plan on carrying around their issues before you decide to release them? And here's the point. Anger has a very, very short life cycle before it becomes dangerous and very hard to kill. Do not let anger become dangerous. Do not let the sun go down on the anger. And then he explains why. He says something that I've just been sitting on all week long. He says, and do not give the devil a foothold. Now, a foothold is like a spot in your life or a place, and the implication is like a staging area or a staging ground. Do not, in other words, he's saying anger allows the devil to move into your life and set up a base of operations in your life. That's what anger does. And if you don't deal with like the rest of that pie, like the 85%, the 95%, the story you love to tell because it's so delicious, if you don't deal with that and deal with it in the shortest time span possible, you give the devil a staging ground, a staging area in your mind, in your emotions, in your relationships, in your family, in your character, in your future, and in your calling, and he will continue to be able to reach in and shape your future because of something you won't release from your past. So, well, how do I keep that from happening? That sounds terrible. The answer is by deciding no more sunsets. That's it. I'm going to decide no more sunsets before I begin dealing with this. And it may take me a while to deal with it, but deal with it I shall. I'll get counseling. I'll get accountability. I'm going to bring some honest, wise people into my life and discuss this with them, but I am determining that my past will remind me, but it will not define me. Now, I want to go back just a second to a word I ran past really fast. And this is so fascinating. He says, don't give the devil a foothold. Now, if you've read many of Paul's letters, you may have noticed that the term he usually used to refer to the devil or Satan is actually the word Satan, or it's the Hebrew word Satan, which meant accuser or a prosecutor or something like that. But here actually is one of these rare times he uses a much more common Greek word, diabolos. Diabolos was a very common word for somebody who was just like a slanderer, a liar, a false accuser. You have some people in your life that are like that. Like, I know someone. A diabolos is someone who spreads false things, who's somewhat malicious about that, a truth twister, someone who spreads lies and poisons other people's perceptions about someone. And he says, do not give the diabolos this foothold in your life. Now, here's what's really interesting to me about that. Research shows that anger, when it sets into our lives, anger changes our brains. Anger actually shapes and changes our thought patterns and our perceptions of others, and it alters our reality. Anger lies to us. Anger deceives us. Anger magnifies and sometimes even manufactures their contribution to the problem, and it minimizes our fault and our contribution to the problem, making them increasingly the evil villain and ourselves increasingly the innocent victim. And our anger deceives us. It deceives us, and we like it, and it feels good, and so we allow it, forgetting our contribution, misremembering their contribution, altering reality. And listen, if you think that what you're thinking about that other person when you're angry is the truth, well, it's just the truth. If you think that what you're thinking about that other person when you're angry is the truth, you need to know you are lying to yourself. You are deceiving yourself, and you are giving deception a foothold in your life. You are giving the deceiver a foothold in your mind. And he says, do not let the sun go down on that, friends. Do not let the sun go down on that. Don't open the door of your life, your mind, your family, your future, your relationships to that kind of thing. Deal with it. Deal with it. Neutralize it as quickly as possible, because the longer it lasts, the harder it is to kill, and the foothold becomes a stronghold, and then it's just there. So you need to decide. You need to decide. My past will remind me. It will not define me. Now, then a few verses later, he comes back to the subject of anger. And again, he's talking about taking off the old, putting on the new, taking off the old, putting on the new. And here's what he says just a little bit later in the letter. Get rid of. You need to take this off. Get rid of. In other words, there's a choice. There's a decision that you can make. Get rid of, strip this off. The painstaking process we talked about last week of removing the old, getting rid of the old. Get rid of, and then he busts out his thesaurus. And he just starts unpacking the language of anger. Get rid of all bitterness that subterranean root of anger that just poison us, and rage, the momentary heat of anger, that hair trigger that you have in your life. Get rid of brawling, which is actually in this context, it's a verbal word. It's the screaming and the shouting. It's the verbal venting of anger. And then kind of the flip side of brawling is slander, which is that more insidious, less overt way that we poison other people's minds about the people that we are angry towards. And malice, oh man, malice is like the granddaddy of them all. Malice, you know what malice is? It's a fancy word. It just means ill will. It just means malice is that thing in you that kind of wants bad stuff to happen to them. And you wouldn't say out loud that you want bad things to happen to them, but when you hear that bad things did, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice because like they are getting theirs finally, some comeuppance. And when you hear that wonderful things are happening to them, not so happy. What is that? That's kind of ugly. It's malice. You get rid of that. You get rid of all of that. He says, if you allow any of this, you allow any of that kind of thing, from bitterness to malice, sunset after sunset after sunset, you allow that to happen, you will give deception and the deceiver a staging area in your life, a staging area to smuggle their issues into your future. You need to get rid of it. You need to get rid of all of that. And then he says, and be kind and compassionate. That word compassionate is like sympathetic. Feeling for them. Like, wait, what? To them? Wait, how would I do that? He's like, yeah, I want you to do that to them. I'll tell you in a second. And the way to do that, he says, is to, here's our word, forgive. To forgive. In fact, that word he uses, forgive, this particular word, and there are a few words translated to forgive sometimes, but this one is to actually just give grace to someone. Just give them grace. To extend grace to them, to give a pardon, to extend grace. And forgiveness says, you're guilty, but I'm not going to hold you to it. You're guilty, but you don't have to pay it back. You did it, and we all know you did it. This isn't about denial. You did it, and I'm giving you grace. You're free. You're free. Emotionally, forgiveness says, you're guilty, but you don't owe me a thing. Wow. You're guilty. You don't owe me anything at all. I'm not going to hold that over you. I'm not going to nurse that memory, nurse that grudge. I'm not going to continue demanding, in my mind anyway, that you repay me, imagining you crawling on your hands and knees over broken glass to give me that apology that you never did. I forgive you. I forgive you completely. Forgiveness, you know what forgiveness is like? Forgiveness is like reaching into your baggage and finding that thing that they snuck in there 30 years ago, finding their issues that they dropped in your baggage so long ago, and like digging, what is that smell? You know, and you're digging through there and you go, oh, that's what they put there. And pulling it out and letting it go. Saying, I forgive you. I forgive you. To ensure that next time is not like last time, you need to release the past so the past can release you. To ensure that next time isn't like last time, release the past so the past can release you. And the only way you can release the past is to forgive, and to forgive completely and freely. And I know they don't deserve it. I know they don't. That's what forgiveness is, by the way. If they deserved it, it wouldn't be forgiveness. Forgiveness is never fair. It's one of the pushbacks just we internally feel towards it, but it is the only way to release the past. It's the only way to close the window of opportunity on the deceiver. It's the only way to stop the people you least want to be like from influencing you the most. The only way to break the chains from what happened in your past and what was done to you then from what will happen in your future is to forgive, and to forgive freely, and to forgive completely. Now, if you're not really a God, Bible, Jesus person, you're not really sure what you think of that, that's just good advice. It's optional for you. You can choose it, not choose it. It's just good advice. But if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, it's not optional for you. It's not optional for you. In fact, for Christians, the bar actually gets raised a little bit higher in the next phrase. He says, forgiving each other just as, to the same degree, in the same way, in Christ, God forgave you. In other words, we were all guilty. We were all guilty, and God just gave grace. He just extended grace upon grace upon grace, and he forgave, and he forgave completely. And just as God looks at you and says, your past will never define how I see you now. Your past does not control how I view you now. I'm not under any delusions about what you did and why you did it, the good, the bad, the ugly. I know it all. And yet he looks at you, he looks at me and says, I forgive you. I forgive you. And if you've received that, if you say to others that you've been on the receiving end of that, you have no choice. I have no choice but to give it, and to give it as freely and as fully as I myself have received it. And Paul says, don't let another sunset go down. Don't let another sunset go by before you begin to do that. And whether it's from 50 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 5 days ago, or 5 minutes ago, you need to release the past so the past can release you. Forgive as you have been forgiven. Forgive freely as you have been forgiven. And then I would add this, go first so you can go on. Go first so that you can go on. And one of the things we say is, well, if they would come to me, and if they would apologize, and if I saw that they really meant it, and they could own their part, then I would forgive them. To which I say, and if they never do, what then? If they never will, and maybe in some cases, if they don't even know, if they don't even know that you're still carrying that around, if you are waiting for them to come to you, it's like you are giving them the keys to your future happiness and your future wholeness. You go first. Paul says you get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, slander, brawling, and malice from you get rid of it all. You decide. Now, as we end, and we're going to wrap up now, I want to get really practical, and I want to give us an exercise for how to do this. Like, how do I actually put this into play? And this is just from years and years of my own personal experience, but also from helping so many others work through their own past issues and find some freedom from it. A forgiveness exercise that might require a little bit from you, but isn't it time for us to deal with this, right? And so here it is, and you don't have to do it this way, but I'm just going to throw it out to you. The first thing is this: make a list. Make a list of who the they are, the them in the pie. Make a list of who they are and what they owe you. Just as in week 2, you had to define what was in your slice after identifying it, this is your opportunity, your need to define what's in theirs, to actually acknowledge it. Make a list of who the they are. And there might be like multiple scenarios. You might have so much anger and so much resentment that you want to chop this into some bits and deal with it, like certain scenarios and certain situations at a time. This is what is sometimes called a resentments list of people you resent and people you have a hard time with, the people you're carrying around anger and pain towards, and what they owe you, or what you at least feel like they owe you. And here's the thing. Sometimes we've tried to forgive. I bet we all have a story like this. We've tried to forgive in these broad general terms, like, okay, I forgive them. I know I'm supposed to forgive them. But we have given anger a foothold. And that foothold became a stronghold. And it didn't go away with our quick little prayer, and I forgive them. And a few days later, in my case, sometimes a few minutes later, a few nanoseconds later, I'm rehearsing that same script again. This might require a little bit more than I prayed a prayer and forgave them, but it didn't seem to work. There's a little bit more taking off that needs to happen before we put on. And this is a powerful exercise. It's sometimes part of what in 12-step circles is called a searching and fearless moral inventory. And the way I was taught to do it, it's a physical piece of paper. That's what I encourage you to do. A physical piece of paper on a list, you write it down. You write every person from your past. And again, this is the first time I did this, I could not believe how many pages and how long this took me to do. It was humbling. It was humiliating to think I carried that much resentment around in my life. You list at least that person, that scenario, and who was involved with it, and what they took from you. You got to get a little specific here. What they took from you, be as real about it as possible. They took my childhood. They took my innocence. It's harsh. They took my trust. They took my ability to trust. I seem to have trust issues now because of those things that have. They took something from me. They took my reputation. They took my self-esteem. I look at myself differently because of those things that happened in my past. They took my marriage, they took my career, they took my money, they took my pride. They took my relationship with my kids that I always wanted to have. They took my future. They took something from you. And in other words, you're saying because that happened in my past, now this area of my life, it isn't what it should be. That has affected me. It's taken something from me. And this, I'll tell you what this is. This is getting at the heart of it. This is getting at the heart of it because bitter and rage and slander and malice, those might feel great, punishing them and seeking revenge. This is so vulnerable. This is so vulnerable. This is the hard work of renewing and restoring, taking off the old, stripping it down to what it really was, getting down to the surface. You make a list and then you declare your complete and specific forgiveness. You declare. I suggest you say it out loud. I always tell people, say it out loud and say it line by line, item by line, item. Say it out loud. In fact, I developed my own little script that I have used for many, many, many years. And my little script just goes like this. You did that, fill in the blank, you did that, and it was wrong, and it hurt. And I forgive you. And then I always add this last line. I forgive you completely. That's right, you did that. That was wrong. That hurt. I forgive you. I forgive you completely. You make a list, you declare your complete forgiveness, and then you destroy the record. This is like that hands-on, tangible, visceral experience of saying, like tearing up an IOU, it is done. I've had people burn it, go through burning ceremonies. One time in my office, never again, always outside after that. A lot of smoke. You destroy it somehow, get creative with it if you want, tear it into tiny bits, you destroy the record, and that is you saying, I am done with this, no more sunsets. Step 4, repeat as necessary, because it will be, especially number 2. Repeat as necessary, especially number 2, because if this foothold has become a stronghold, don't expect it to be one and done. It's not going to work like that. Here's the thing about your brain. In your brain, thoughts and memories are tied directly to certain emotions. You cannot think a thought without having an emotion attached to it, positively or negatively. A lot of research on this. And every thought you have, including every memory you have, including every memory of every person that you have, is tied to an emotion. And for years and years, your brain has been tying certain emotions of bitterness or anger or malice or so forth with certain people and faces and names and experiences. For years, you've been linking those two together. And now your spirit and your will has made a decision. I am going to forgive them, but you will need to train your brain to make it so, or retrain your brain, if you will, because you already trained it the first way. So repeat it as often as you need. Get rid of all bitterness and so forth. Put on compassion, put on grace towards them, and you will need a new script for that. And your new script will be, that's right, they did do that. I was wrong, that hurt. And by the way, I've forgiven them. I've forgiven them completely. 2 seconds later, that's right, they did do that. I was wrong and hurt. I've forgiven them. I forgive them completely. And if you do, you will become one of those people. You know, those people that you've admired, that, and when people dig around in your story and discover your story, they'll be like, wow, that happened to you? I never would have guessed. I never would have known. You are so healthy. You are so well put together. You are so balanced. Your head is on so straight. How did that happen for you? How did you get from there to here? And you will say, I decided. One day, I just decided. My past will remind me. It will not define me. Hey, one final thought, and then we're done. And this is so key. Quick disclaimer. Until you recognize your part of the past, you will have a difficult time releasing the rest. Until you recognize your part of it, you will have a difficult time releasing the rest, because anger has a way of deceiving us. Anger has a way of lying to us, and we lie to ourselves. And the rest of our story has, over the years, created this smokescreen and this fog around our piece of the pie. And your psyche, your ego, has grown to depend on that. To depend on that anger to protect itself from the guilt or the regret that you might feel if you said, truth is, I had a lot to do with that. And when you begin to own your piece, it will lower the temperature with regards to the rest of the pie. And until you do that, anger will become a defense mechanism that you need and that you rely on in order to protect yourself from being honest and facing your regret. That's why, until you do step 1, recognize it, it'll be difficult for you to release the rest. Step 1, recognize it. Step 2, rethink it. Step 3, release it. Do not miss next week, part 4, the series finale. It is the step that brings them all together. We'll wrap it up next week. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for your amazing grace, your unlimited forgiveness, your relentless love, how wide and how long and how high and how deep this love is that has forgiven us and set us free. How could we ever, upon receiving such a gift of grace, not extend it to everyone who has owed us as well? And so we just want to decide. We want to decide. Our past will remind us, won't define us. As we have received your love, we will freely give it out to others. As we have received forgiveness, we will freely and fully give it. And so I pray for every single one of us. I know this hits us in very different places, some of us in process. And so I just pray that you would give each one of us the ears to hear what we needed to hear tonight, and the wisdom to know how to apply it, what to do with it. And then would you give us the grace and the courage and the power to put one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and move towards this life that you have for us, full of freedom and forgiveness. And I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching us online. If you're still with us, before you take off, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to fill out that Connect card. If you're in the room and you got a program, tear that off, fill it out. We just want to hear from you. Want to know that you're here. If you're our guest watching, we'd love to hear from you as well. Speaking of the Connect card, we've got baptisms coming up next week, and this might be your next step. And the reason why I say this is you can write this on your Connect card. If this is your next step in following Jesus, would you let us know you're interested? You can write it on your Connect card, either on the app, online, or physically on your card, and then you can drop that in the boxes on the way out, or the baskets on the way out. Our guest services teams will have it. If you are giving with us today, of course, you can do that online on the app as well, but if you have an envelope, you can drop that envelope in the basket on the way out too. And by the way, you can drop that Fab 4 serve sign up if you're in the room in the basket too, and if you're online, you can sign up on the app and on our web too. So please do that. Let's join together to make this next season great for us. And hey, God bless you. See you next week for part 5, and then Mother's Day weekend as we kick off a brand new series. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for being here.